We have some breaking news overnight from Eastern Europe this morning. When is a ceasefire not a ceasefire? Well, when it's between Russia and Ukraine. It's the latest twist in the conflict, and WSJ's Paul Sonne joins us now to explain what's going on. Paul, thanks for being there.
Thanks for having me.
So, ceasefire seems to have been agreed on and then not really. What's going on?
So what happened this morning is initially Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko came out and said that he had spoken with Russian President Vladimir Putin and they had agreed on the terms of a permanent ceasefire. The Kremlin spokesman later subsequent to that came out and said that it wasn't up to Russia to agree on the terms of a ceasefire because Russia is not party to the conflict, that Ukraine should only agree with the rebel forces because that's who they were fighting, not Russian troops. And just now, Vladimir Putin has come out and started dictating essentially the terms of the peace, the ceasefire that he has in mind. So clearly what we're seeing here is a move towards some sort of ceasefire, some sort of freezing of this conflict, in part because Ukraine has just been put on the back foot due to a Russia-backed incursion that occurred over the last couple of days.
So he's still maintaining that this is basically nothing to do with him, and it's all just separatists doing their own thing within Ukraine, completely independent of him. That seems to be consistent. At least he's keeping the consistent same line. Now, I also understand he is going, there's some troops in Russia are going on military maneuvers, war games, if you like. Tell us more about that.
That's been going on for months, especially in the region near the Ukrainian border. But basically what's happening here is over the last couple of days, Ukraine had been gaining ground in the rebel territory of Donetsk and Luhansk in the last couple of weeks and months, gradually moving closer and closer to the two cities that are the rebel strongholds in the area. And all of a sudden that changed last week when what the White House described as an incursion of Russian material and men came over the border and basically completely changed the calculus of the battlefield. And all of a sudden, rebels, the rebels, and what NATO has described as Russian soldiers were all of a sudden pushing back the Ukrainian forces, and they were in retreat. So the Ukrainian government is faced with this problem at the moment where they basically face the prospect of losing. They know that they can't go up against Russia. There's no significant military support coming from Europe or the U.S. And so at this point, after that big change in the calculus of the battlefield, Russia is now saying, well, here's what we want. Here's what we want for a peace in this region.
And is that going to happen? Do you think is Ukraine going to say, okay, well, yeah, that's fine. We'll take that just to get this conflict over?
I don't think Ukraine has a lot of choices. Ukraine has no match for the Russian army. If Russia have shown in the last couple of days, in the last couple of weeks, that they are willing to support the rebel forces and push back Ukrainian soldiers, then there's really not a lot that Ukraine can do about that, absent any sort of backing from Europe or the U.S., which has not been forthcoming. So Ukraine doesn't really have a choice, and I think that they've realized that. And so the prospect that we have here is sort of exactly, in a lot of ways, what Russia wanted from the beginning, which is some sort of, frozen conflict within Ukraine, a zone of the country that is not really controlled by the central government, and which actually would certainly prevent Ukraine from entering NATO.
Okay, interesting stuff. It keeps twisting and turning, and I know you'll keep us updated. Thank you very much, Paul Sonne of the Wall Street Journal.